At a crucial investor meeting for the company my late husband and I built, my son's wife publicly told me to go clean the bathroom, you wrinkled old woman. My son just sat there, silent. I simply walked out, but a fire ignited deep within me that day. This is the story of how I reclaimed everything. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from, so I can see how far my journey has reached. The Oak boardroom, usually a place of powerful decisions and quiet, focused ambition, felt stifling to Elara. At 66, she sat hunched slightly in a corner chair, the same chair she had occupied countless times beside her late husband, Arthur, as they meticulously built Sterling Industries from a fledgling dream into a formidable entity. Now, the weight of Arthur's absence pressed down on her, a constant ache in her chest that only sharpened in this room where his spirit still seemed to echo. Her son, Owen, stood at the head of the polished table, his usually composed features betraying a rising panic. A digital projection flickered behind him, displaying charts and graphs he struggled to articulate. His voice, ordinarily booming with a manufactured confidence, now faltered, tripping over technical jargon and vague projections for international expansion. Elara watched, a knot forming in her stomach, as he fumbled through a presentation crucial for securing their next round of investment. It was clear to her, and undoubtedly to everyone else in the room, that he was utterly out of his depth. Across the table, Owen's wife, Serafina, sat rigid, her designer suit impeccable, her perfectly manicured nails tapping a restless rhythm against the dark wood. A strange, misplaced confidence radiated from her, a brittle sheen that did little to mask the growing tension. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, darted between Owen and the two formidable investors seated opposite. Mr. Sterling, a man whose silver hair matched his steely gaze, and Miss Lee, whose expression remained impassive, betraying nothing. Mr. Sterling leaned forward slightly, his voice a low rumble. Mr. Sterling, he began, addressing Owen, your projections for market penetration in the Middle East seem optimistic. Could you elaborate on the regulatory frameworks you've navigated or plan to engage with? Owen swallowed hard, his eyes wide. He stammered, offering a jumble of buzzwords that clearly impressed no one. Miss Lee finally spoke, her tone cool and precise. Specifically, Mr. Sterling, given the historical complexities, what measures have you taken to ensure compliance with, for instance, the Saudi Arabian Investment Authority's recent amendments regarding foreign ownership? A sheen of sweat broke out on Owen's forehead. He looked utterly lost, his gaze flicking wildly around the room until it landed on Elara. A flicker of desperation crossed his face, and he turned to her, his voice cracking slightly. Mother, you dealt with those original negotiations back when Father was alive. Could you perhaps shed some light on the early regulatory frameworks? You were quite instrumental in that region. Elara, startled but ready to help, straightened in her chair. She had indeed spent months in Riyadh and Dubai, understanding the intricate legal landscape, forging relationships that had been instrumental to Sterling Industries' early success in the region. She opened her mouth to speak, to offer the clarity Owen so desperately needed, to save him from his floundering. But before a single word could pass her lips, Serafina's chair scraped against the floor. She rose sharply, her height accentuated by her heels, her voice cutting across the room like a whip. Janine, she declared, her tone dripping with disdain. This is a professional meeting. We don't need you here confusing everyone with outdated information. The name Janine hung in the air, a deliberate mispronunciation of Elara's actual name, a dismissive flick of the wrist. Elara felt a flush rise to her cheeks. She wasn't just Elara, she was Janine, someone irrelevant, a relic. I was just trying to help Owen, Elara began, her voice softer than she intended, trying to explain that her information, far from outdated, was the very foundation Owen was struggling to recall. Serafina let out a short, cruel laugh, a sound that grated on Elara's nerves. Help, she scoffed, a sneer twisting her perfectly made-up lips. Her eyes raked over Elara, from her sensible cardigan to her comfortable shoes. Help? Go clean the bathroom, you wrinkled old woman. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy and suffocating. Mr. Sterling and Miss Lee sat frozen, their expressions unreadable, but clearly uncomfortable. Owen, the very son Elara had dedicated her life to, sat slumped in his chair, his gaze fixed on the table, utterly failing to defend his mother. Not a word, not a protest. He merely watched as his wife publicly shredded his mother's dignity. Serafina, seemingly emboldened by Owen's silence, pressed her advantage. She turned back to the investors, her voice now falsely sweet. As you can see, gentlemen, we handle things here professionally. Elara is simply a retired widow who should be at home knitting, not interfering with serious business. The insult, the casual cruelty, the complete disregard for Elara's lifetime of contribution struck her like a physical blow. The boardroom, once a symbol of her achievements, now felt like a cage. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed back her chair. The air in the room was thick with unspoken shame and the pungent aroma of misplaced power. Elara, her head held high despite the tremor in her heart, rose slowly. She didn't look at Owen. Couldn't bear to. She simply turned and walked towards the door, the click of her heels echoing unnaturally loud in the stunned silence. As she reached the threshold, she heard Mr. Sterling's voice, a low suggestion that perhaps they should reschedule this meeting. The cool, sterile air of the hallway offered little comfort. Elara pushed through the heavy glass doors of the building and made her way to her car, her vision blurring. Once inside the familiar confines of her vehicle, the carefully constructed composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face, hot and stinging. She buried her face in her hands, the sobs racking her body. It wasn't just the humiliation, the public dismantling of her worth. It was the realization that in the years since Arthur's death, she had slowly, incrementally, lost herself. She had become an echo, a shadow, and in doing so, had allowed others to define her. But amidst the crushing grief and profound despair, a new sensation began to stir within her. It was sharp, cold, and utterly unwelcome at first, a sliver of ice in the warmth of her tears, but then it solidified, hardening into something resolute and unyielding. It was determination, a fierce, burning resolve to reclaim not just her name, not just her company, but herself. The wrinkled old woman, dismissed and humiliated, was about to remember who she truly was. The heavy front door of her house closed behind Elara with a dull thud, amplifying the cavernous silence within. Her home, once a vibrant hub of family life and entrepreneurial energy, now felt like a mausoleum. Each step on the gleaming marble floor echoed, a lonely sound in the vast emptiness. Serafina's cruel words, "Go clean the bathroom, you wrinkled old woman," reverberated in her mind, a venomous mantra. The sting of the insult was still raw, but beneath it, a deeper, more insidious pain throbbed. The recognition that, in some twisted way, Serafina had merely articulated a truth Elara had allowed to fester. Since Arthur's death 3 years prior, Elara had slowly, unconsciously, retreated from the world. The sharp edges of her ambition had dulled, her formidable intellect had been relegated to puzzles and crosswords, and her days had become a monotonous cycle of quiet contemplation and endless cups of tea. She had shed her identity as a businesswoman, a strategist, a partner, and embraced the role of the grieving widow, the benign matriarch. She had let go of the reins of Sterling Industries, trusting Owen to steer the ship, even as she sensed his inadequacy. And in letting go of the company, she had, in essence, let go of a significant part of herself. A restless energy, unfamiliar yet potent, surged through her. She found herself drawn to Arthur's study, a room she had pointedly avoided since his passing. It was a time capsule, preserved exactly as he had left it. The faint scent of old leather and pipe tobacco, the overflowing bookshelves, the heavy mahogany desk. Dust motes danced in the shafts of late afternoon sunlight, illuminating the quiet reverence of the space. With a trembling hand, Elara pulled open one of the lower desk drawers. Her fingers brushed against the familiar texture of aged manila folders. Her eyes scanned the labels, searching, until she found it. A thick file, its cover emblazoned with the handwritten title, Middle East Ventures 1995 to 2010. This was her territory, her expertise, the very foundation of the outdated information Serafina had so scornfully dismissed. She carried the folder to Arthur's large, comfortable armchair, sinking into its familiar embrace. As she opened it, the past unfolded before her. Crisp contracts, meticulously translated into both English and flowing Arabic script, lay nestled among vibrant photographs. There were images of groundbreaking ceremonies under blazing desert suns, local dignitaries shaking hands with a younger, more vibrant Arthur, and countless photos of massive construction sites, slowly transforming the barren landscape. Then, she found it. A snapshot, slightly faded, showing her younger self, probably in her late 40s, standing proudly beside a partially completed structure. Her hair, then a rich auburn, was tucked beneath a bright yellow hard hat, and her face, unlined by grief and worry, radiated a fierce pride. She was pointing at blueprints, a confident smile playing on her lips. The caption on the back, in Arthur's elegant hand, read, "Elara, overseeing the new water treatment facility in Jordan. My brilliant partner." A pang of something akin to grief, but not for Arthur, shot through her. It was grief for the woman in the photograph, for the Elara she had been, the woman who had negotiated complex deals, navigated cultural nuances, and spearheaded monumental projects. She remembered the exhilaration of those years, the challenging problem-solving, the satisfaction of seeing concrete results from her strategic thinking. It hit her then, with the force of a physical blow. She hadn't just lost Arthur. She had voluntarily lost herself. She had put her own formidable intellect and drive into a box, sealed it with a lid of mourning, and placed it on a shelf, believing her active contribution to the world was over. Serafina's words, while cruel, had inadvertently revealed the extent of her self-imposed exile. The shrill ring of her phone startled her, pulling her back to the present. It was Owen. His voice was subdued, laced with an unfamiliar anxiety. "Mom," he began, I just wanted to apologize for Serafina. She can be a bit much sometimes." The apology was weak, almost an afterthought, devoid of genuine conviction. It confirmed what Elara already knew. Owen lacked the backbone to stand up to his wife, even when she disrespected his mother. "It's all right, Owen," Elara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "What happened with the investors?" A sigh, heavy and defeated, came through the line. They postponed their decision. Said they needed more time to review our strategic direction. "It's bad, Mom. Really bad." He paused, then his voice dropped to a near whisper, laden with a confession. "Mom, I don't know what I'm doing. The company is hemorrhaging money." Elara's heart seized. Hemorrhaging money? Sterling Industries, the rock-solid company Arthur and she had built with their blood, sweat, and tears, was in trouble? "What do you mean, Owen?" she asked, a sudden chill creeping up her spine. "Serafina. She thinks we should sell the core manufacturing division," he blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "She says it's old-fashioned, not profitable enough. She wants to focus entirely on luxury real estate development, the new project in Dubai, the one she's so excited about." Elara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Sell the manufacturing division? It was the beating heart of Sterling Industries, the foundation upon which their empire was built. It employed 200 loyal, long-term staff, families who had depended on Sterling for generations. It was stable, reliable, and while perhaps not as glamorous as luxury real estate, it was the bedrock. The Dubai project, on the other hand, was notoriously high risk. A gamble even Arthur, with his boundless ambition, would have approached with extreme caution. "Owen, that's insane," Elara exclaimed, her voice rising in disbelief. "That division is our legacy, our stability. What about all the employees, their families?" "Serafina says it's a necessary cut to pivot for growth," Owen mumbled, sounding like he was reciting a script. "She handles all the numbers, Mom. You know she has a Wharton MBA. She says she understands the market trends." Elara's jaw tightened. A Wharton MBA was no substitute for decades of practical experience, for the gut instinct that came from building a business from the ground up. "Owen," she said, her voice firm, "we need to review those numbers together. Everything. Every ledger. Every projection. I want to see it all. A long silence stretched between them, punctuated only by Owen's shallow breathing. Then, his voice, barely audible, laced with a fear that shocked Elara. "Mom, I can't, Serafina." She'd be furious. She'd probably just dismiss me. The silence on the phone line after Owen's fearful admission hung heavy, pregnant with the unspoken reality of his predicament. Elara took a deep breath. The anger that had simmered moments before, now replaced by a quiet, steely resolve. It was time to pull back the curtain on a part of her life that Owen, in his youthful self-absorption, had never truly acknowledged, or perhaps, had never truly seen. "Owen," Elara began, her voice calm, measured. "Your father and I didn't just sign checks and show up for ribbon cuttings. We built this company, brick by brick, relationship by relationship. When we decided to expand into the Middle East, I didn't just hire consultants. I immersed myself." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I spent months, not weeks, living in Amman, Jordan, not in a five-star hotel, but in a small apartment, learning the local customs, understanding the nuances of their business culture, even the specifics of their building codes and regional regulations." Owen coughed nervously. "Mom, I know you were involved. But, do you know I learned Arabic, Owen?" Elara interrupted gently, but with an underlying current of authority. Not just basic phrases, but enough to negotiate complex contracts, to engage with their legal system, to truly understand the spirit of their agreements. "And it wasn't just Arabic. I also picked up Mandarin when we explored markets in Asia, and enough Portuguese to get by in Brazil during our South American ventures." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, Owen's voice, laced with genuine surprise, broke through. You learned Arabic? And Mandarin? Mom, I never knew that." The disbelief in his tone was palpable. He sounded like a child just discovering a hidden superpower in a parent he thought he knew completely. Elara felt a flicker of sadness. "No, you didn't, Owen. Because your father and I made a conscious decision to keep my professional life largely separate from my role as your mother. We wanted you to have a normal childhood, free from the constant discussions of business strategy at the dinner table. I was mom at home, and Elara, the partner, at the office. And when Arthur and I were on those international trips, you were usually at boarding school or with your grandparents," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "But those weren't just business trips, Owen. They were investments in understanding, decades of relationships, of real-world experience, of building trust and navigating challenges. That's the foundation of Sterling Industries. Serafina has been involved for 3 years, 3 years compared to our 35. What does she actually know about Sterling Industries beyond the spreadsheets and the glamorous facade of new projects?" Owen bristled slightly, a defensive tone creeping into his voice. "Serafina is very smart, Mom. She has her MBA from Wharton. Her profit projections for the luxury developments are enormous. She says it's the future." Elara's gaze swept over the files scattered around her. "The tangible proof of years of prudent, strategic growth. Enormous projections often come with enormous risks, Owen. Have you thoroughly reviewed the details of these luxury developments? The long-term contracts? The political stability of those regions? What about our existing contracts with our manufacturing partners? The loyalty of our employees who have been with us for years, sometimes generations? Does Serafina consider that sentiment that can be discarded?" Owen mumbled. She says those are old ways of thinking. That we need to be agile, aggressive. Agile, yes, Elara countered, but not reckless. There's a fine line between innovation and demolition, Owen. Selling the core manufacturing division is demolition. It's tearing down the very roots that have sustained us. What happens if this luxury real estate gamble fails? What happens to the 200 families who depend on our manufacturing jobs? What happens to your father's legacy? The line went silent again. This time, when Owen spoke, his voice was small, stripped bare of all pretense. "Mom, I think I'm in over my head." It was an admission Elara had long suspected, but hearing it articulated, a chilling confirmation of her fears. A wave of regret washed over Elara. She had stepped aside too quickly, trusting Owen blindly, allowing him to be swallowed by a role he wasn't ready for, and worse, to be manipulated by a woman who clearly prioritized profit over people, ambition over legacy. She had left him vulnerable, a lamb to the slaughter, and in doing so, had put everything Arthur and she had built at risk. Her grip tightened on the armrest of Arthur's chair. The decision formed, clear and cold, in her mind. "Then maybe," Elara said, her voice firm, unwavering. "It's time to swim back to shore, Owen. Or rather, for someone else to take the helm." She disconnected the call without waiting for a reply, the phone feeling heavy in her hand. She was surrounded by the tangible evidence of her life's work. The files and photographs whispering stories of challenges overcome and successes hard won. The photograph of her, young and proud in her hard hat, stared back, a silent challenge. She closed her eyes, picturing the vast, intricate network of Sterling Industries, its past, its present, and its precarious future. No, she wasn't just the past. She was also the present, and she would fight for the future. She would prove it. She would start by doing what she hadn't done in years. Elara reached for a well-worn Arabic-English dictionary on Arthur's shelf, a faint smile touching her lips. "Marhaban," she whispered, testing the familiar sounds. The old woman, dismissed and humiliated, was beginning to remember her own strength. The morning sun, usually a welcome sight, felt harsh through Elara's kitchen window. She was still nursing her first cup of tea, the Arabic-English dictionary open beside her, when her phone rang, jarringly loud in the quiet house. It was Owen, his voice a frantic whisper. "Mom, you won't believe it," he began, barely taking a breath. "A major investor, Tariq Al-Hamad, from the Middle East, called this morning. He wants to meet today. He's interested in acquiring Sterling Industries." Elara's teacup clattered softly against its saucer. Tariq Al-Hamad. The name was vaguely familiar, a faint echo from years past, but she couldn't quite place it. An acquisition? That was a terrifying prospect, a final surrender of everything she and Arthur had built. "An acquisition, Owen?" she asked, her voice tight with alarm. "Has he made an offer? What's his history?" "He hasn't specified terms yet, just expressed serious interest. He's apparently a very significant figure in the region. Serafina is ecstatic, says it's exactly what we need, a fresh start, a complete overhaul. She's already talking about it being our exit strategy." Elara felt a cold dread seep into her. Serafina would see this as an opportunity to wash her hands of the core manufacturing business, to fuel her risky luxury real estate ventures with the proceeds of Sterling's sale. "Mom," Owen continued, his voice dropping further. "Serafina was very clear. She wants you to stay away from the office today. She said you're a complication, and that your presence might muddy the waters or confuse Mr. Al-Hamad." The insult, still fresh from yesterday, stung anew. A complication. As if her decades of experience, her foundational knowledge of the company, were a liability. But the sting was quickly overshadowed by a growing suspicion. Tariq Al-Hamad. Why was that name gnawing at her? She ended the call, promising Owen she'd consider staying home, a promise she had no intention of keeping. Her mind raced, sifting through countless names, faces, and deals from her past. Tariq Al-Hamad. It was right there, on the tip of her memory. Elara pushed herself away from the table and returned to Arthur's study. The scent of old paper and history, a comforting embrace. She systematically went through the old international files again, her fingers tracing the names and dates. Finally, tucked away in the Jordan and UAE partnerships folder, she found it. A formal letter, dated 2008, on embossed stationery from the Royal Court of Jordan. It was from Prince Karim Al-Hamad, a man Arthur and Elara had done significant business with in their early ventures. The letter formally recommended his nephew, a promising young engineering student named Omar, for a summer internship at Sterling Industries. The prince had spoken highly of Omar's intellect and ambition, suggesting he could benefit from hands-on experience in a well-established international firm. Elara's eyes widened. Omar. That was it. Not Tariq, but Omar. Then, with a sudden flash of clarity, she remembered. Omar al-Hamad. He had indeed spent 3 intense months with them back in 2008. He was a serious, remarkably intelligent 24-year-old from MIT, sharp as a tack, who had immersed himself in every aspect of their operations, from the factory floor to the boardroom. Arthur, usually a harsh critic, had been genuinely impressed. He'd often remarked on Omar's relentless work ethic and his surprisingly innovative suggestions, even for a young intern. Elara recalled one specific evening when Arthur had spent hours discussing future energy solutions with Omar, captivated by the young man's foresight. She even remembered a conversation where Omar had mentioned wanting to go by his middle name, Tariq, for professional endeavors. A more modern sound, he had said with a shy smile. It was a common enough practice in the region. A small, knowing smile touched Elara's lips. Tariq al-Hamad. Omar. The complication might just be a familiar face, and if it was him, then Serafina's attempt to exclude her would not only be foolish, but potentially disastrous for their side. At precisely 1:30 p.m., Elara stood before her full-length mirror. She was dressed in her classic navy suit, perfectly tailored, with a simple strand of pearls at her neck. Her hair was neatly styled, her makeup minimal but precise. She looked formidable, certainly, but also approachable, professional, and utterly confident. This wasn't a costume. It was her uniform, the armor she wore when she was Elara. The partner, the businesswoman. She drove to the Sterling Industries building, her heart a steady drumbeat of anticipation. As she approached, she noticed the subtle signs of an important visitor. 2 sleek, black sedans parked discreetly near the entrance, their tinted windows hinting at a serious security presence. This was more than just a potential investor. This was someone of significant stature. Stepping into the lobby, the familiar hum of the office enveloped her. Clara, her longtime secretary, looked up from her desk, her eyes widening in surprise and then breaking into a warm smile. "Mrs. Sterling," Clara exclaimed, rising from her seat. "It's so wonderful to see you. We weren't expecting you." There was a genuine affection in Clara's voice, a stark contrast to Serafina's dismissive tone. "Hello, Clara," Elara replied, her smile soft. "Just thought I'd pop in. A blast from the past, you might say." She glanced towards the closed boardroom door. "Is Mr. al-Hamad already here?" Clara nodded, her eyes shining. "Oh, yes. He arrived about 15 minutes ago. He's absolutely charming, Mrs. Sterling. So polite, so distinguished. Everyone is buzzing." Clara leaned in conspiratorially. "He asked specifically if you were still involved with the company. Owen just said you were retired." Elara's smile tightened slightly. Retired. A complication. She would soon remind them all precisely what her involvement entailed. She simply nodded to Clara, a silent acknowledgement, and walked purposefully towards the boardroom door. Please continue to watch to discover Elara's fate. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage and triumph against adversity. The elevator, sleek and modern, beckoned directly to the executive floor. But Elara chose the less conspicuous route. She bypassed it, instead heading for the fire escape stairs, their concrete steps a stark contrast to the polished marble of the lobby. A strange mix of theatricality and quiet desperation propelled her upwards. She felt a little ridiculous. A woman, in a perfectly tailored navy suit, sneaking through service areas, but the determination to understand what was happening to the company she had built over a lifetime outweighed any fleeting embarrassment. She found the maintenance closet adjacent to the main conference room, a cramped space filled with mops, buckets, and cleaning supplies. The sounds from the boardroom were muffled but discernible through the thin wall. Elara pressed her ear against the cool plaster, holding her breath, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Serafina's voice, bright and overly professional, cut through the wall. "And as you can see, Mr. al-Hamad, Our pivot towards high-end luxury developments represents an unprecedented opportunity for exponential growth. The old manufacturing division, while quaint, simply doesn't align with our future vision. It's an outdated model. A pause, then the deep, cultured voice of Tariq al-Hamad, resonating with a quiet authority that Elara instantly recognized as the same sharp intellect from years ago, only matured now. Forgive me, Miss Sterling, but I recall Sterling Industries being celebrated for its innovative work in water treatment facilities across the Gulf region, even for specialized manufacturing of precision components. My late uncle, Prince Karim, spoke highly of Mr. and Mrs. Sterling's foresight in these areas. Are those no longer a part of the core business? Serafina's laugh, brittle and dismissive, grated on Elara's ears. Oh, those old projects? Yes, from a bygone era. We're focused on the future now, Mr. Al-Hamad. Not living in the past. We've streamlined our portfolio considerably. Elara heard Owen's hesitant voice next, tinged with apology. Most of that institutional knowledge, it left with my mother, Mr. Al-Hamad. She's retired now, you see. The word retired hung in the air, a deliberate misrepresentation. Tariq's voice sharpened, losing its previous smooth cordiality. Retired, Mr. Sterling? Or perhaps, sidelined? My uncle's letters often mentioned Mrs. Sterling's significant contributions, her direct involvement in those pioneering projects. She wasn't merely a figurehead. Oh, Elara. Serafina chimed in, her tone dripping with condescension. She's in her 60s now, Mr. Al-Hamad, not really equipped for modern business practices, if you understand my meaning. Her ideas are charmingly archaic. We handle things quite differently these days. Elara gripped the wooden handle of a mop, knuckles white with fury. Archaic? Not equipped? The woman who had negotiated multi-million-dollar deals in foreign languages, who had spent months in the field overseeing construction, was now dismissed as an elderly, befuddled relic. The gall, the sheer audacity of Serafina's ignorance, was breathtaking. I see, Tariq said, his voice now dangerously calm. In that case, Miss Sterling, I would be interested in seeing the actual financial reports, not just projected figures, and perhaps, for a comprehensive overview, some historical data, compiled by someone with a longer historical perspective on the company's trajectory and previous successes, someone who truly understands the foundation. Serafina's voice hardened. That won't be necessary, Mr. Al-Hamad. Owen and I are perfectly capable of providing you with all the necessary documentation. There's no need to disturb elderly family members who are no longer actively involved. A profound silence descended, thick with unspoken tension. Elara held her breath, anticipating Tariq's response. When he finally spoke, his tone was impeccably polite, almost deferential, yet infused with an unmistakable finality. I understand completely, Miss Sterling. Perhaps we should reschedule then, for a time when all the necessary information can be readily accessed. Elara recognized that tone. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a definitive no. Tariq al-Hamad, the sharp young intern, now a powerful man, was politely but firmly walking away from the deal. He had seen through Serafina's thinly veiled incompetence and Owen's spineless acquiescence. After a few more minutes of muffled sounds and the scrape of chairs, Elara heard the boardroom door open. She waited, unseen, until the elevator doors chimed, and she heard the distinct sounds of departing footsteps, followed by the distant rumble of luxury cars starting in the parking lot below. She crept out of the closet, making her way to a window overlooking the employee parking lot. Below, she watched Tariq al-Hamad, surrounded by his security detail, his posture radiating quiet power. He was no longer the eager, respectful intern. He was a force to be reckoned with, a man who commanded respect and expected genuine substance, not superficial projections. He had seen straight through Serafina's facade. As she watched his car pull away, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Owen. Meeting didn't go well. We need to talk. Elara leaned against the cool glass of the window, a slow, determined fire igniting in her belly. She had been invisible for too long, a ghost in her own company, a complication to be dismissed. The time for quiet observation, for lurking in maintenance closets, was over. She would stop being invisible. She would step back into the light, and everyone, especially Serafina, would see exactly who Elara Sterling truly was. The realization that Tariq al-Hamad had seen through Serafina's bravado, and that her company was on the precipice of ruin, spurred Elara through a sleepless night. The image of the powerful man in the parking lot, walking away from Sterling Industries, replayed in her mind. He was their last hope, the one person who understood the company's true value, its legacy. She had to reach him. By dawn, her plan was forming. Through a network of old business contacts, people who still remembered Mrs. Sterling with respect, she made discreet inquiries. It didn't take long to ascertain Tariq al-Hamad's whereabouts. He was at the Fairmont downtown, scheduled to fly back to Dubai the following morning. Time was running out. At precisely 10 a.m., Elara placed a call to the Fairmont, asking to be connected to Mr. Tariq al-Hamad's suite. The voice on the other end was a crisp, efficient assistant. "May I ask who is calling?" "This is Elara Sterling," she stated, her voice clear and steady. "From Sterling Industries. I believe Mr. al-Hamad was a guest of our company yesterday. I would like to discuss that meeting with him." A brief pause, then a click. Tariq al-Hamad's voice, deep and resonant, came through the line. It was neutral, polite, but held a hint of surprise. "Mrs. Sterling, I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I can imagine, Mr. al-Hamad," Elara replied, choosing her words carefully. "I wanted to apologize for any incorrect impressions you might have received yesterday regarding Sterling Industries. There were nuances that perhaps weren't fully conveyed." "Nuances, indeed," Tariq murmured, a subtle inflection in his tone. "I understand you are scheduled to depart tomorrow," Elara continued, pressing on. "I was hoping, if your schedule permits, that we might have a private meeting before then. There are aspects of Sterling Industries, and its future, that I believe you would find enlightening." A long pause stretched between them, heavy with consideration. Elara could almost hear the gears turning in his sharp mind. Then, he spoke, his voice betraying nothing. "I have an opening for lunch. 1 o'clock, in the hotel restaurant. Would that suit you, Mrs. Sterling?" "Perfectly, Mr. al-Hamad. I look forward to it." By 1 p.m., Elara was seated at a discreet table in the Fairmont's elegant, hushed restaurant. She had arrived 15 minutes early, a habit Arthur had instilled in her. She wore the same navy suit, but this time, she had added a touch of personal strength. Arthur's favorite sapphire earrings, deep blue stones that glinted with purpose. They were a reminder of their shared history, their formidable partnership. She felt powerful, not in an aggressive way, but with a quiet, undeniable self-possession. She scanned the room, and there he was, Tariq al-Hamad, already seated at a table across the room, his back to the entrance. Immersed in what appeared to be financial reports on a sleek tablet, he radiated an aura of focused intensity, a man of serious purpose. He was older now, perhaps in his late 30s, his features more chiseled, his dark hair threaded with distinguished silver at the temples. The young intern had truly blossomed into a formidable figure. As she approached his table, he looked up, his gaze locking with hers. He immediately rose, a polite gesture that spoke volumes of his upbringing and respect. He extended his hand, his grip firm and warm. "Mrs. Sterling, it is good to see you again." "Please, Tariq," Elara said, her voice gentle but firm. "Call me Elara. We've known each other for too long for such formalities." A faint smile touched his lips, a flicker of the young man she remembered. "Elara, then. It is an honor." "The honor is mine," she replied, settling into her seat. "And a pleasure to see how remarkably successful you've become. Arthur always said you were destined for great things. He predicted it, in fact. Said you had a vision that went beyond most young men your age." Tariq's smile faded, replaced by a genuine somberness. "I regret deeply that I never had the chance to meet with Mr. Sterling again after my internship. His mentorship, even for those few months, was invaluable to me. He was a truly remarkable man." "He was," Elara agreed, a soft ache in her chest. He would have been proud of the man you've become. She met his gaze directly. Tell me, Tariq, was your visit yesterday? Your interest in Sterling Industries? In any part due to that connection? To your history with us? He nodded, without hesitation. Partly. Yes, I have followed Sterling Industries' trajectory for years, admiring its stability, its ethical approach to business, and its pioneering spirit in the Gulf region. My family's interests have expanded significantly, and we are actively seeking partners with established expertise and a strong reputation in the very sectors Sterling Industries once dominated. His expression grew more serious, the casual warmth from moments before receding. However, after yesterday's meeting, I must admit, I left with significant concerns. The company presented was not entirely the Sterling Industries I had come to admire, nor the one I believed still existed. The implication hung heavy in the air. Sterling Industries, under current management, no longer represented the values or capabilities he sought. The ball was now in Elara's court. Tariq al-Hamad's words. The company presented was not entirely the Sterling Industries I had come to admire, hung in the air like a heavy weight. Elara met his gaze, a quiet fire burning in her eyes. This was her moment. What if I told you? Elara began, her voice steady and clear. That it could be again? The Sterling Industries you remember? The one you admired? Tariq raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism in his dark eyes. With all due respect, Elara, your son and his wife are currently at the helm, and from what I gathered yesterday, your official involvement is minimal. Elara offered a small, knowing smile. Officially, you are absolutely correct. I have no executive title, no corner office, but unofficially? She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, yet still resonant with authority. Unofficially, I am the person who built most of the relationships you're probably thinking about. I'm the one who learned Arabic out of necessity, not as an academic exercise. I'm the one who spent months on the ground in Jordan, in Qatar, understanding the unique challenges and opportunities, long before Serafina had even heard of a Wharton MBA. She paused, letting the contrast hang in the air. I bring 25 years of hands-on experience, of deeply forged relationships, of understanding the cultural and political landscapes that underpin every successful venture in the Gulf. Serafina brings 3 years of theoretical knowledge and a penchant for high-risk, high-return ventures that ignore the very bedrock this company was built upon. A slow smile spread across Tariq's face. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes gleaming with a renewed interest. That is a compelling argument. Elara. Just then, a waiter approached their table to take their orders. Tariq glanced at the menu, then spoke to the waiter in fluent, rapid Arabic, a complex order that impressed Elara with its authenticity. After the waiter departed, Tariq turned back to Elara, a polite apology on his lips. My apologies, Elara. I often forget not everyone speaks. Before he could finish, Elara cut in, responding in equally fluent Arabic, her pronunciation crisp and natural. Not at all, Tariq. It's a beautiful language, and entirely natural to use it here. It's a pleasure to hear it spoken so well. Tariq's composure, usually unshakable, visibly faltered. His eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock crossing his features. He stared at her for a long moment, processing. Then, a delighted grin broke out, and he leaned forward, his voice a low, excited murmur, as he peppered her with rapid-fire questions, all in Arabic. So, Elara, he began, his words tumbling out with enthusiasm. Do you still remember the intricate soil compositions we discussed for the Al-Dura pipeline, and the specific challenges of managing water salinity in the coastal desalination plants? The political sensitivities in dealing with the provincial governors in the north? Elara met his volley with equal fluency and precision. She not only recalled the details but elaborated on the technical aspects of the projects, the specific regulatory hurdles they had overcome, and the delicate art of maintaining trust with local partners. She spoke of the innovative engineering solutions they had implemented, the critical importance of local workforce integration, and the long-term impact of their infrastructure projects. My language skills weren't a hobby, Tarek, she explained, switching back to English but maintaining the same earnest tone. They were out of necessity. You can't truly build relationships, truly understand a partner's needs, if you rely solely on translators. You need to speak their language, figuratively and literally. That's something Serafina doesn't comprehend. She sees Sterling Industries as a collection of assets to be optimized, not as a tapestry of relationships, expertise, and legacy. She dismisses that as outdated information, as sentiment. But those relationships, that institutional knowledge, are our most invaluable assets, she continued, gesturing subtly. You, Tarek, are a perfect example. Your internship here, learning from Arthur and me, was part of that institutional knowledge. Serafina would deem it irrelevant, but you just told me you followed Sterling Industries for years because of that connection. Because you remembered the woman who taught you about soil composition and the man who trusted you with real responsibility. Tarek nodded slowly, his gaze thoughtful. I remember the woman, Elara. And I remember the man. You both taught me a great deal. Over the course of their lunch, Elara laid out her vision for Sterling Industries. She spoke passionately about the strategic value of the manufacturing division, explaining how its consistent, high-quality output provided a stable financial backbone for the company, while also fostering loyalty among its 200 long-term employees, a critical factor for any sustainable enterprise. She emphasized the potential for growth in specialized manufacturing, particularly in green technologies, which aligned perfectly with burgeoning global demands. Tarek listened intently, occasionally interjecting with sharp, insightful questions that demonstrated a profound understanding of the market. Finally, as the dessert plates were cleared, he leaned back, a decisive look on his face. Elara, he began, his voice firm. My family's investment group has 3 major infrastructure projects slated for development in the Middle East over the next 5 years. Combined, they represent an investment of over $200 million. We are seeking a joint venture partner, one with proven expertise, deep regional knowledge, and a commitment to quality and ethical practices. He paused, his gaze unwavering. I believe Sterling Industries, under the right leadership, could be that partner. Elara's breath hitched. $200 million. This wasn't just a lifeline. It was a revival. However, Tarek continued, a serious glint in his eye. There is one crucial condition, non-negotiable. You, Elara, must be the project manager for these ventures. You must be the one to steer these ships. I trust your judgment, your experience, and your relationships above anyone else's in your company. Are you prepared for that, Elara? The weight of Tarek's proposal, a $200 million lifeline, hit Elara with a thrilling jolt. Project manager? She repeated, a genuine smile breaking across her face. Tarek. That's extraordinary. I need to discuss this with Owen. Of course. Tarek leaned forward, his expression serious. Elara, understand this. Yesterday, your daughter-in-law told me that the previous generation was no longer relevant, that your company had moved beyond its foundations. Today, you've shown me that the previous generation might be the only thing that can save it. My offer, and my trust, are for you, not for Sterling Industries as it is currently run. Elara felt a powerful surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just a business deal. It was vindication, a second chance. She stood, shaking Tarek's hand firmly. Thank you, Tarek. I will be in touch very soon. As soon as she returned home, Elara called Owen, her voice firm, leaving no room for argument. Owen, you and Serafina are to meet me in the Fairmont conference room, the one on the ground floor. In an hour. It's urgent. Do not be late. Serafina arrived first, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Her eyes, usually sharp, darted around the elegant conference room, looking for targets. Elara, what is the meaning of this? Calling us here, to a hotel, like some sort of clandestine meeting? After you promised Owen you'd stay away from the office yesterday. This is entirely inappropriate interference. Owen shuffled in moments later, looking pale and nervous, avoiding eye contact with his mother. Elara, however, remained calm. She simply gestured to the two empty chairs opposite her at the long table. "Sit down, both of you." Her voice, though quiet, carried an undeniable authority, a new resolve that brooked no argument. Serafina, startled by the unexpected steel in Elara's tone, hesitated for a moment before reluctantly taking a seat, Owen quickly following suit. Without a word, Elara slid a document across the polished table. It was a formal letter of intent from Tariq Al-Hamad's investment group, detailing a 5-year, $200 million joint venture with Sterling Industries. Owen's eyes widened, scanning the figures with a mixture of disbelief and dawning hope. Serafina snatched the letter, her expression cycling rapidly through shock, disbelief, and then outright panic. This can't be real," she sputtered, her voice high-pitched. "He dismissed us yesterday. Politely, yes, but he walked away. This is some kind of trick." "It's no trick, Serafina," Elara stated, her voice even. "He left yesterday because you insulted him. You dismissed 25 years of deeply cultivated relationships, the bedrock of our business in that region. You treated him like a provincial businessman who didn't understand modern practices. You, Owen, sat there and allowed it." Elara then pulled out a series of neatly organized folders. "And your modern practices, Serafina? This luxury development plan of yours? It's a fantasy. Its enormous profit margins are based on thin air. Ignoring the real assets and established markets, your father and I worked decades to secure." She laid out the details of the projects Tariq had proposed. A state-of-the-art hospital in Kuwait, a new university campus in Oman, and a crucial water treatment and infrastructure upgrade in Jordan. "These are the projects," Elara explained. "The kind of work Arthur and I built Sterling Industries' reputation on. Concrete, essential infrastructure, real value." Then, Elara shifted, and without warning, began to speak in fluent Arabic, her voice flowing with the rhythm of the language. "In our business, in the Middle East, success is built on trust, respect for history, and reverence for experience. You cannot build a lasting enterprise by dismissing decades of goodwill and proven expertise." Owen stared at her, his jaw dropping. You speak Arabic?" he whispered, astounded. Elara switched back to English, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. "Yes, Owen. I speak Arabic, and Mandarin, and Portuguese, and I have a personal contact list spanning continents, built not on LinkedIn, but on shared meals, long negotiations, and mutual respect." She spread out a collection of documents across the table. Old letters of recommendation from foreign dignitaries, signed contract renewals, and even a recent bid invitation for a major infrastructure project in Saudi Arabia that Serafina had never even known existed. "This, Serafina," Elara said, tapping the last document, "is what you dismissed as outdated institutional knowledge." Serafina, momentarily speechless, finally found her voice. "But you're retired, Elara. You can't just—" "And what?" Elara interjected, her voice sharp. "Let you run the company into bankruptcy?" "I've been doing my own investigation, Serafina. That outdated manufacturing division you want to sell. It's consistently profitable, provides stable cash flow, and has robust, long-term contracts. It's the only thing keeping Sterling Industries afloat right now." She then turned to Owen, her gaze unflinching. "And your wife's grand luxury development plan? It requires a $50 million upfront investment in an unknown market, with an optimistic, at best, 30% chance of success. It's a gamble that would gut our reserves and bankrupt us within 2 years if it failed." Owen's face went white. He stared at Serafina, a dawning horror in his eyes. "50 million? Serafina, you told me the manufacturing division was losing money. You said this was a guaranteed pivot." Serafina flushed, stammering, but Elara pressed on. "Owen, the company's contract acquisition has been in steady decline for the last 3 years. Do you know why?" Because people do business with people they trust, with relationships built over time, not with an MBA and aggressive projections. Our real assets, Serafina, are relationships, reputation, and expertise, none of which can be effectively leveraged if they're dismissed as irrelevant. Elara then produced a faded photograph from her bag, one she had found in Arthur's study. It showed a younger Arthur, Elara, and a much younger Tariq al-Hamad, all smiling, standing proudly in front of a construction site in Qatar. She placed it squarely in the middle of the table. "This," she said, "is why Tariq al-Hamad came back. This is why he offered a $200 million partnership, because he remembered the people, the trust, the foundation." She looked at Serafina, then at Owen. "And his non-negotiable condition? I, Elara Sterling, must personally manage these projects. My experience, my relationships, my outdated knowledge. He trusts me." Elara leaned back, allowing her words to sink in. "So, here is your ultimatum. Accept this partnership, with my full and active leadership, and secure the future of Sterling Industries, or decline, and face certain bankruptcy within 2 years. Tariq flies back tomorrow. You have 24 hours to decide." Owen looked utterly lost, his gaze shifting between the daunting letter of intent and his furious wife. "Mom," he mumbled, his voice small, I never really wanted to run the company. It was always Dad's passion. I didn't know what else to do." Elara softened slightly, seeing the genuine distress in her son's eyes. "I know, Owen. And perhaps there's another path for you, one where you can truly thrive. But this company, Arthur's legacy, is not that path. Not right now." Elara left Owen and Serafina in the Fairmont conference room, the weight of her ultimatum hanging heavily in the air. The choice was theirs: accept her leadership and Tariq's life-saving partnership, or cling to a failing vision and face inevitable ruin. The hours that followed were long, filled with a nervous anticipation that kept Elara pacing her cavernous home. At precisely 11:30 p.m., her phone rang. It was Owen. His voice was subdued, weary, but held a newfound clarity. "Mom," he said, "we accept all of Tariq's conditions. We're in." A wave of relief, profound and exhilarating, washed over Elara. "Then," Owen continued, his voice softer, almost humble, "and Mom, please, teach me everything. I realize how little I know." A joyous warmth spread through Elara's chest. This was more than a business victory. It was a reconciliation, a rebirth for her son. The next morning, Elara dressed with meticulous care. Her best dark green suit, sharp and professional, paired with a silk scarf that added a touch of vibrant confidence. As she stepped into the familiar Sterling Industries lobby, she felt a profound sense of purpose, a powerful current of energy coursing through her veins. This wasn't just coming back. This was reclaiming her rightful place. Clara, her face beaming, met her at the reception desk. "Mrs. Sterling, it's so wonderful to see you. Everyone is buzzing with the news. Your old office is waiting for you, exactly as you left it." At 10 a.m., Tariq al-Hamad arrived, not with the intense security detail of yesterday, but with a more relaxed, yet still dignified, presence. He greeted Elara with genuine warmth, his smile broad and sincere. "Elara, I am so pleased you accepted. It is a very good day for Sterling Industries." In the newly rechristened executive conference room, Serafina sat stiffly, her expression carefully neutral, a stark contrast to her usual theatrical displays. Her eyes, however, betrayed a simmering resentment, an acknowledgement of the dramatically shifted power dynamics. Owen, though still nervous, sat a little straighter than before, a flicker of determined resolve in his gaze. "Mr. al-Hamad," Owen began, his voice a little shaky but steadying as he spoke, "thank you for your patience during our transition period. We are delighted to move forward." The meeting commenced, immediately diving into the intricate details of the 3 Middle Eastern projects. Elara, now in her element, spoke with an easy authority, outlining logistical challenges, discussing resource allocation, and recalling specific regulatory precedents from decades past. She answered Tariq's questions with a depth of knowledge that left Serafina visibly out of her depth, occasionally glancing at the table, her MBA proving useless in the face of Elara's lived experience. Tariq watched Elara with an approving nod, his eyes gleaming. "This, Elara," he said. "This is precisely the institutional knowledge, the understanding of the landscape, that I was seeking." They formally outlined the partnership, Sterling Industries, with Elara as the senior project manager and Owen as her deputy, would be responsible for the ground-level construction and operational oversight. Al-Hamad International would provide the financing and strategic coordination. Then, Tariq made another unexpected proposal. To further solidify our partnership and ensure a stable supply chain for these long-term projects, Al-Hamad International wishes to purchase a 20% stake in Sterling Industries' manufacturing division. "We are prepared to offer $15 million for this share," Serafina gasped, her carefully constructed neutrality shattering. Owen stared, disbelief etched on his face. $15 million for the division Serafina had dismissed as outdated and wanted to sell off for pennies. Tariq smiled. "It's good business. It secures our supply chain, gives us a competitive advantage, and ensures the quality of the components critical to these projects. And, I believe, it provides Sterling Industries with valuable capital for modernization and growth in its core capabilities." Elara felt an immense wave of vindication wash over her. Not only had she saved Sterling Industries, but she had secured its future, ensuring the stability and modernization of its core manufacturing division, and, most importantly, securing the jobs of 200 loyal employees. 3 months later, Elara sat in her revitalized office, reviewing preparations for her upcoming trip to Kuwait. The hospital project was ahead of schedule, a testament to her meticulous planning and rekindled drive. Owen, now her dedicated deputy, entered, a stack of reports in his hand. He was still learning, but the nervous energy had been replaced by a quiet enthusiasm. "Mom," he said, a genuine excitement in his voice. "The team in Amman just confirmed the last batch of permits for the Jordan water treatment facility. We're on track for groundbreaking next month." He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I'm actually starting to enjoy this. Really understand it." Just then, Tariq joined them, striding in with his characteristic calm efficiency. "Elara. Owen. Excellent news from Kuwait. Sheikh Faris, the Minister of Health, specifically asked after you, Elara. Said he was looking forward to seeing you again." Elara smiled, a warm glow spreading through her. The relationships she had built decades ago, the very ones Serafina had dismissed, were proving to be the most powerful currency of all. Later that day, as the private jet lifted off, carrying Elara, Owen, and Tariq towards the golden horizon, Elara gazed out the window. Sterling Industries was not just surviving, it was thriving, embarking on a new era of prosperity and purpose. Owen, once lost, was finding his footing, a committed student of the business. Serafina, though no longer in a position of power, had found a new, more suitable role managing domestic operations, leaving the high-stakes international deals to those truly equipped. Elara had found more than purpose. She had found a deeper, more profound partnership with Tariq, one built on mutual respect and shared vision. Tariq leaned over, a twinkle in his eye. "Thank you, Elara," he said softly, "for taking a chance on a young, ambitious intern all those years ago. You taught me so much." Elara chuckled, her eyes sparkling. "And you, Tariq, needed to learn about people, about the heart of a business, not just the numbers." It seems we both had something to offer each other, then and now. The plane climbed higher, soaring above the clouds. Elara, no longer a dismissed widow, no longer a wrinkled old woman to be ignored, sat confidently as the senior project manager of a revitalized empire, heading towards a future built on competence, respect, and a legacy gloriously reborn.